Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Conversations That Cure. I'm Greg, aka Pops.
And I'm Michael Ryder, aka Ryder Grooms.
I tell you, we are excited to be here again with you, and I'm excited about what we're going to talk about today because it's basically the definition for what we're doing, cure, and it's conversations that cure. And you know, I was thinking about it, and one of the things I thought about, the most impactful conversations that I had never came from somebody on the outside of me. It always came from the conversation I had with myself when I had to question myself on things that were going on in my life. And I can remember a conversation I had with myself when I was homeless at the time, and I was sleeping in a storage room, and I cried myself to sleep every single night. And I don't know how I generated this question. I had just got put out. My stepfather was beating my mother, and of course, I'm 16, I'm going to jump into the fight. So I jumped into the fight. He kicked me out. The night before that, I stayed at my friend's house. So when they found out I was homeless, I asked them, could I stay there? They said no. So I slept in the storage room. I slept in apartment buildings, but I cried myself to sleep every night, feeling sorry for myself. And I never forget asking myself this question: is feeling sorry for yourself going to change anything? And when I asked myself that question, that changed my perspective of where I was at. But the most impactful conversations we're ever going to have, I believe, is the conversations that we're going to have with ourselves. Because those are the ones that only we know about, what's going on the inside of us. Can't nobody make us do anything. We still have to make the decision to, deal with what's going on the inside of us. So when I asked myself that question, I changed how I viewed my life. And I was only 16 years old. And I believe that's where I began to pay more attention to how I thought, how I felt. I began to tap into, I guess, who knows? Back then I didn't know nothing about self-awareness, but that's when I began to tap into that part of my life to where it was my responsibility from that point on, regardless of what had happened to me, because there's always going to be things that happen to us in our lives, but how we deal with them is on us.
I agree, and I think, and I relate a lot, and I love the fact that you, at like the age of 16, you were able to kind of have that moment of awareness, and then even in hindsight now, looking back on it, being like, okay, that was the moment, the pinpoint of it. I've shared it on our platform before, and like my biggest moment of self-awareness was me getting sober, right? Like 22 years old, in and out of being homeless, living at mom's house, having a job, not having a job, broken friendships. I was a liar, cheating, thief, right? It was the conversation with myself to finally decide like, hey, this needs to stop. If you want to live anything and have any type of purpose in life, we kind of have to push past this. Now, how are we going to do that? And I didn't know those things, but it was that initial conversation with myself of like the drugs, the alcohol, the lying, the cheating, the stealing, the dirty ways that you have all need to stop first and foremost. And then we could start with a blank slate. And it was that conversation that really put me in that mindset of like, all right, let's really give this thing a try. And from that moment, that's when life started to get better. Like I said, I wish I had that moment at 16, because that's really when 16 is when I really started hitting the downward spiral. And I wish I would have had that conversation with myself at 16, but I wasn't able to. I was nowhere in that same type of mindset.
I don't think nobody was.
Nah. And even at 31, there's still moments, and gifted now, almost been sober 10 years and things like that. There's still moments when I'm like, okay, you still see the old mentality creep back in. But it's the gifts of self-awareness that we have today and the tools that we always use that kind of help us mold and get through those difficult times now.
Yeah, and you know, one thing that it was hard for me to bite off and chew was the fact that what had happened to me. And at 16, I felt that I shouldn't have got put out at 16 years old. My stepfather shouldn't have done that to me. You know, I blamed everybody. And I felt like, you know, I was a victim. But as I got older, I began to learn that life is not going to be pretty. Life is not going to be the way you quote unquote think it should be. You are responsible no matter what anybody has done to you. Now, this is what I had to learn. No matter what anybody has done to me, I'm still responsible for the turnout of my life. Yeah. I'm either going to not forgive them or hold them accountable. And the thing that, you know, I realized growing up is that I had to forgive people and let things go. Because when I was holding on to things, they moved on. They were doing fine. But I was still responsible for my life at that time. And yeah, I can say, you know, it wasn't fair. There's a lot of things, you know, that people have done, you know, that may have caused a bad situation. But because they caused the bad situation does not mean I don't have to deal with the situation. I still had to deal with the situation. I still had to speak to myself and find out, okay, how can I make this better? And in that time, one of the questions I realized that was liberating to me is when I asked myself, okay, now that you know that having a pity party doesn't work for you, who are you going to become now? What do you want out of life? So once I asked myself that question, it kind of set me free from somewhat of what I was going through. Because when I asked myself that question, I learned that I paint the picture of my life. When I found out what I wanted, not what everybody else may have been expecting of me, what I wanted for my life, it kind of took chains off of me because it let me know this. Now, if you want that, you're responsible for it. You have to make the decisions on what do you have to do to become what you want. And that right there, through that practice of self-awareness and that conversation with myself, it brought me to the point to where I had to sit down and say, okay, what do you have to do to become this person? What are things that you have to, practice? What are the new habits? And what are things that you may be doing in your present life right now that's not working? Because just because, I had that conversation with myself when I was 16, I still have that conversation with myself now.
I think we're always going to have that conversation with ourselves. It's like going into the topic of like what you want, right? Like I knew I wanted to be sober, right? I knew the biggest thing, and even outside like the external, like the drugs, the alcohol, things like that, I knew I wanted to be happy.
Yeah.
I had such a self-loathe against, like I hated myself. I told the story, I couldn't look myself in the mirror, things like that. I had such a self-hatred for myself. All I wanted to do was feel normal and be happy. Those were the two things I wanted to feel some internal peace and be happy with Michael. That was my goal. That was my mission. Everything else was just a bonus after that. If I could figure out how to do that, anything else in this world would just be a bonus. Just like you said, how am I going to get there? I got with a group of men who I've seen had those things, right? Those men had internal peace. Those men had happiness. They also had some external things, right? They had jobs. They had successful relationships with other people in their circles. They were living life normal, and I didn't know how to do that. So getting around those men and learning the tools from them, that helped me in my own life in itself, right? To then, eventually over time, I found that internal happiness. Right now, everything else that comes forth from that, that's all bonuses that I get.
Yeah, I agree. I think back when I was younger, I was struggling trying to identify the things that I had liked to do, things, I loved. And back then, the group I hung out with, everybody was fighting.
Yeah.
So, I did the fighting thing, but I did the fighting thing to be accepted. You know, I was good enough to protect myself, but I didn't, you know, I wasn't great at it. Everybody else around me was great at it because they loved it. I didn't love it. So I found myself just trying to fit in because I could not figure out what I wanted. And that's when I learned it's so important that you know what you want for yourself, because if you don't, you're going to end up trying to fit in, because everybody want to be loved, especially at that age. You know, you just wanted to be accepted. And then I had tapped into something. We went to the pool. We used to go to the pool all the time. And everybody, I saw this kid doing a backwards flip off the diving board. And I was like, wow, that looks good. I never did that before in my life. I remember I started practicing that and I fell in love with it. I got on the gymnastic team. And then I realized once I found out what I wanted to do, I used to chase everybody else's dream because I had no clue what I wanted to do. When I started flipping, I turned around and looked behind me. Everybody's chasing me, trying to do exactly what I wanted to do. And it let me know you thought everybody had it together and y'all all was in the same boat. Yeah. Everybody was still trying to figure out what they want to do. But once I was able to figure out at least one thing, what I wanted to do, it gave me some grounding. It put me in a position where I began to feel good about myself. Mm-hmm. I wasn't trying to keep up with everybody else. So I began to feel good about myself. And that taught me that, you know, it doesn't take a whole lot. You can just figure out one thing. What is that one thing that you want to do that that you love doing? And once you can figure that out and move in that direction, you can build from there. Yeah. You're able to build from there. And I learned that growing up, because it spilled over into fitness, because, you know, and another way I found out what I wanted to do, and I wouldn't say that it was something I was in love with. I found out what I wanted to do because of something I went through. Yeah. It was painful. And it wasn't what I want to do. It was something I was not going to do. My real father, when I was young, he didn't want to have nothing to do with me. And I remember that pain. So I said to myself, if I ever get a girl pregnant, I'm not going to do that to my child. So I found out that I wanted to show and give that love to my kid. So when I gave that love to my kid, it helped me to identify, you know, being a father. Then after I became a father, I became a husband. And that gave me some more identity and self-belief within myself, to where I wasn't trying to keep up with everybody else. Yeah. Because once you know what you want to do, it grounds you, and it grounded me. It allowed me to build self-belief. It allowed me to build self-confidence. So when people begin to say something about me, it didn't shake me as much. Yeah. It didn't move me like it used to, because I didn't know exactly what is it that you want to do? Yeah. And I think a lot of times especially young men, if you don't have a clue on what you want to do, the thing I, would do is go into taking care of yourself. Yeah. Go into fitness, because we have one body in this life. Take care of the body you want to experience life in. Mm-hmm. And that's a focus, because if you can take care and learn how to take care of yourself, what you want to do will eventually come to you, but it'll allow you to begin to learn to value yourself even more.
I think, and we've had countless conversations where we talk about the gym all the time, because I live in there as well. And I love and relate with the fact that you said, like, I went there when I was going through something, right? Because that's the exact same thing. I played football for 10 years, worked out, was in the weight room. I did CrossFit before for over a year. And I would always fall off. I never stayed consistent with it, unless it was during those years when I played football, because I had to. Mm-hmm. I had no choice. The era that I'm in right now is the most consistent that I've been. I'm going on like 2 years strong. But it wasn't because I was like looking at myself in the mirror and was like miserable with the way I looked or anything like that. I've always had self-confidence in my look for the most part, right? But I was in that dark place, right? It had been right after my brother was killed, and something in me was like, listen, don't just sit here alone at night. Go do something. Don't try to fill this void within your life with all the negativity, right? I could have filled it with women. I could have filled it working more. I was like, why don't we take this aspect? Because I was sound. We spoke yesterday about like the 3 pillars, right?
Yeah.
The mental, the spiritual, and the physical. I was sound mentally and spiritually still. But physically, there, I was like, you know what? Why don't we enhance that even more? I had not been in the gym. My diet was kind of on and off for years at a time. So I found myself starting to go to the gym more, spending an hour, 2 hours in there and loving every second of it, because in those moments when I'm in there, there's nothing else. That's the only two things I could worry about are what's up in here and what's going on in here. Those are the only 2 things. Because if I don't, I'm going to make a mistake and I'm going to end up injured, right? So the gym for me during the beginning was an escape. After I got past that phase, when it was just an escape and a place to go to, I found myself falling more in love with what it was doing for me physically. I feel better. I wake up in the morning. I have a lot more energy. I love the transitions over time. I love the compliments. I love when people, I love the compliments. That's what gets me. I'll spend a week out of the gym. People are like, man, you still got it. I'm like, thank you. Thank you. It shows it's the validation that shows me that the work that I'm putting in for myself is being acknowledged by other people. And I appreciate that.
Yeah. And I think it's so important because, we can expect, we want people to see us, we want people to love us.
Yeah.
But people will only love us based upon how we love ourselves.
Yes.
We will always draw to us the way, people to us the way we love and feel about ourselves.
Okay.
So if something happens to us in any type of relationship at times, before we go point fingers at them, we gotta look in the mirror. Okay, what signs did I ignore? What is it that I didn't listen to? Because the thing that the gym has taught me is I learned to feel in the gym. I learned to, when I go there, I work out slow. I don't go to rep real fast. I go to connect with my body. Yeah. When I do that, I learn to feel every muscle. In turn, because of self-awareness, it brought me a little deeper. I pay attention to what's on the mind. I always pay attention to what's on my mind. And in the gym is where I connect with myself, because it taught me to take care of what you have. And the first thing that you have that's given to us is your body. So it's my responsibility to take care of it. And once I learned how to take care of my own body, I began to realize the decisions that I was making. Like, I can't go in the gym and lift super heavy if I'm not strong enough. I may be able to go move the weight, but is moving the weight going to cause any type of improvement? No, it's not. I just moved the weight. But if I learn to go in there and work with what I can, with what I have, I'm going to make improvements. So it taught me to connect with my body, realize what I was doing. Because if I'm going to the gym to take care of me and make sure I look good, make sure I'm feeling good, make sure I present myself the best way I can, then that's what I'm expected to enter into my life. But if I'm not taking care, first of all, of the only vehicle that was given to me, but I expect somebody to see me and to understand me and hear me, wait a minute.
It's not gonna happen.
Wait, that's not gonna happen. That's not going to, and I'm not going to be able to see the signs, or not even see the signs, hear the signs, because I learned your intuition speaks to you, but it whispers.
Yes.
Does not yell, it whispers. But if we're not accustomed to listening to the body, to our mindset, it'll go over our head. And when it goes over our head, we do what? We blame. Because I used to blame everybody. I used to blame everybody until I learned and I realized, I did know that, but I didn't pay attention to it. So when I got into the gym, I slowed down and I listened and I took care of the very first thing that was gifted to me. That was my life. That was my body. That was my response. If I didn't know what I was going to do, I took care of that. And that allowed me to get deeper in touch with myself. And then when I was able to understand and work through problems, because when I would go to the gym, I used to go for an escape because I wasn't happy with me.
Yeah.
But, you know, when I began to go into the gym and I would work out, I began to, you know, notice things about myself. Because I would come to the gym with problems. But I realized one thing, going to the gym with problems, but still leaving with the problem was a problem.
Yeah, it doesn't. I like that. Like I said, we both used it as an escape at some point. Now it's for me, a lot of the times it's no longer the escape. It's just another tool I got in my bag. The same way for my mental, right? I'll speak to a therapist. I do things that try to circulate and stimulate my mind, right? And keep me in a sane, sound mind. The same way spiritually, I sit here and I pray, I meditate, I do these things. I read scriptures, I read literature, I talk with men about spiritual aspects of life. The same way I go to the gym and use that as my physical tool now, right? Between going to the gym, my diet and things like that, those are the tools I use to continue to help stimulate myself physically, right? I now have all three of the pillars to where it's like I am continuously stimulated on all three levels, which then I'm able to stay right here.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There's plenty of times, even when, let's say my diet is low, I'm eating like the past month, I've been traveling a lot. My diet has been junk.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
My gym has been cut loose a little bit, a little less than normal. I feel it. Right. I'm still mentally, spiritually, I'm still good. But that physical hasn't been there, and I can feel it within my soul, right?
Yes, yes.
I'm a little more sluggish in the mornings. I'm a little more agitated at times, right? Because I'm not there. The whole circle of life ain't there, right? So now that's one of the things I'm trying to do. Even today, we're gonna get back in action, but I need to get back into that full swing of life. Because when I'm knocked off one of those pillars, everybody around me everybody might not see it in that moment, but I do, because it's that self-awareness that I know through those conversations I've had with myself countless amounts of time. I know what works, I know what doesn't work.
Yes, yes. And I'm so glad you said that, because we'll be able to feel when something's wrong. We don't have to go question anybody. We'll be able to feel when something's not sitting comfortable within ourselves. We'll be able to identify it, because, you know, some people may not have the gym. Go for a walk.
Yeah, something.
You jump some rope. Go do some push-ups, but learn to take care of what's yours.
I think that's a big thing, just making sure, identifying the things that work for you.
Yes.
Right? The tools and the things that we give, they're aspects of things that work for us in our lives.
Yes.
And we know that they've worked in our lives. If you try them and they work, great. If you try them, they don't work, don't give up. That's not the end of the road. There's still plenty of things that might work for you in your life and your daily routines.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I agree with that 100%, because, you know, it's one of the things that I use is that I'll take a sheet of paper, I'll put a line down the middle, and I'll ask myself, in becoming who I want to be, what is it that I need to do and the benefits of it? And then I'll put on the other side, if I don't achieve these things and become this person, what's going to happen? And I'll read that periodically to remind me the benefits of becoming this person. Because if I don't step my game up and there's not consistent growth in my life, then that simply tells me this, that the same storm that's going on in my life is going to continue to repeat until I change ways. And I don't, when I write the list down, one of the things I ask myself first, what is one thing that you can do that will bring change in your life all over right now? One thing. And I learned to do that because I used to try to do like 20 different things and I wouldn't get nothing accomplished. Yeah. But when I focus on one thing, when I did the one thing and I focused there and I said, what would bring the greatest change in just one thing that you can do? And I found out what it was. I stay focused on that one thing and I always write the benefits of that thing and the benefits if you don't do that thing. Those are tools that I use, and I periodically look at those things because I've learned, and we all know, no matter what happens to us in life, at the end of the day, I'm still responsible for my life. I'm still responsible for the outcome of my life. And that's it. There's no other way around it. And, we all have examples. You have examples you go to. I have examples that I go to. But it's still left up to me. And if I don't know this, then that means I need to get in touch with myself.
You need to go a little bit further. I think that was a great conversation.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Please, please, please go like, subscribe, comment below any topics, conversations that you would love to see us have on our platform. And we're going to continue to bring you conversations that cure and give you everything and all the tools and the gems that we have. Last but not least, we would love to thank our sponsor, Passive Consultants, for this episode. If you have been in a car accident or a slip and fall after 911, you better call our guy, Paul. Need an attorney or medical help? With one call, Paul does it all. Go to passivelife.com. That's PASS, the letter V, life.com. Car accident, slip or fall? You better call our guy, Paul. From your boy, Michael Ryder, aka Ryder Grooms, and Pops, and everybody at Conversations That Cure, we thank you guys.